Hey everyone! Now this is a tutorial that I'm making which follows on from a tutorial I made a while back all about making muzzle flares that come out the end of guns. Now that was made for a guy called Life of Peter, and it just turns out that he wants me to make a tutorial on how to make lasers come out of the end of a gun. Something that should hopefully look like this. Looks pretty cool, doesn't it? Peter, I'm going to teach you how to do that, and anyone else watching, you can also follow along as well. So, let's do this. Now, as I did in the last tutorial, I'm going to show you how to do this effect in different programs. First of which is Adobe After Effects. It can all be done in that program. The second one, it requires two programs. Well, when I say requires two programs, if you want to do it in Final Cut Pro, it requires two programs. But if you're okay with just doing it in Motion, then it just requires Motion. Yeah, you'll see why in a sec. Okay, just bear with me.
Okay, to create this effect in Apple Motion, we are going to need to create project from file, assuming that you are going to put the laser beam over the scene of a gun firing. So I'm just going to trim this clip that I have down to all that I need. That is just about good enough. Zoom in on the clip so that I can see every individual frame, which is very handy indeed. So we're going to need to go to the frame at which our gun fires. You see it just cocks back there. It cocks back there. Jeez, I really can't speak today. And then it hits the piston right there. So right here we are going to need to go to our library, go to the shape section, and right here it says neon rectangle. I'm going to drag the neon rectangle into our group. We can put it right there, insert it into group. There we are. So now that we have our neon rectangle, I'm going to go through the process of trimming it down to just 2 frames long, because that is the next part of this tutorial. So I'll see you when I've done that. Alright, so right here it's 2 seconds long. So first thing we need to do is we need to go over to our inspector. We need to change the color of the laser to what we want. So I want my laser to be a red, a pure red, just like this. So right here in the gradient we just click on the 2 outside colors and change them to the color we want. Very patriotic right there. So once we've done that, we can then, we're done with the color. We can go over to the properties and change the transform options, or we can change them right here on the canvas, which I'm going to do because it is a heck of a lot easier. We are going to transform the laser so that it looks like it's coming out the end of the gun, just like that. Is that just about right? Let's make it a bit shorter. I think that looks a little bit better. Yeah, that does look a little bit better. Now, because this thing is firing so quickly, we can add a little bit of blur to it. So what I am going to do is I'm going to see if I can find some blur. Let's see. Let's make... what kind of blur should we put on this? I think we'll put some directional blur in it, plainly because it is firing in a certain direction. So this direction will be... Let's see. Let's go, because it's firing in that direction. Let's make it go in that direction. Right there. The amount, well, once we've animated it, we'll be able to see. So, as I said, we're going to animate it. So, we need to change the transform over a period of time. So, the first thing we need to do, as you might assume, is we need to click the record keyframes right here. At the start, we just want it to be right in front of the gun. On the second frame, what we want to do is we want to drag it to a position where it is just about to leave the screen or leave the frame, and we need to make sure that this motion path that it's following in the same perspective as the gun's pointing. So once we've done that, we'll just take record off, and now as we move through here, we can see that the laser appears to be firing out the gun. So if we play that back, right there, the laser is firing out the gun. Now, I couldn't quite see the motion blur there, or the directional blur I should say. Let's see if this makes it any more clear. Doesn't make it clear that much. So I think what we could probably do is we'll just take the directional blur off. We don't really need it. So forget about the directional blur. That is how you make a laser fire out of a gun in Motion. Now, I'm going to teach you the second step of doing this, which enables you to use this effect in Final Cut Pro X. So what we're going to want to do when we come to the project browser right here is we're going to make a new Final Cut generator. Make sure it's at 1080p since it is the largest resolution that you'll probably use during your video editing career. make sure it's at 30 frames per second. Well, don't make sure it's at 30 frames per second. It's just that I like using 30 frames per second, and I'll make it 30 frames long. Open, and we are left with a blank canvas. What we're going to do is we are going to drag in a neon rectangle like we did in the last part of the tutorial. It's absolutely fine. I'll just change the colors to red again, plainly because I am patriotic. Very, very, very patriotic indeed. And once we have done that, I would enlarge it just to make sure that it is a good size that we can use in Final Cut Pro X. That looks to be absolutely fine. So once we've done that, in order for all the parameters to be able to be changed in Final Cut Pro X, we are going to need to do something called publishing. Now, in order to do that, we just need to go to each option that is in the preferences pane or in the inspector, and we're going to click the drop down arrow at the right edge of it and click publish. Now that means that we'll be able to change whether it has a fill or not in Final Cut Pro X, and I'm going to do that for every single one of these parameters in the inspector panel. So I'm going to do that, and I'll see you back here when I'm done. Okay, I've published all of those settings, so now that we have made this laser beam I should say, I'm going to hit Command S to save it, and I'm going to put it into a category called VFX. I've already done this as an example before. I'm going to call this laser beam, and I'm going to save a preview movie just so that in Final Cut Pro X we can see what it's going to look like. So if we click publish, laser beam already exists, yes, because I've done it before. Let's replace it, and it's just going to render what it needs to render, and that is done. So now if we open up Final Cut Pro X, we should be able to use it. Alright, so right here in Final Cut Pro X, this is the point where the laser should come out the gun, because that's the point where it's firing. In the generators panel, if we go to VFX, our laser beam is right there. So all we need to do is drag it and drop it on top of the video, and we can reposition it just like we did in motion, and we've got all these different options. You see, all of this. Here's the outline. We can change the fill. I don't want an outline because that just degrades the look of the laser. So all you need to do now that you've made this generator is position it and animate it, like I said, to look like it's firing out the gun, and that is how you do it in Final Cut Pro. So now that I've shown you that, I'm going to show you the last way of doing it, which is a little bit different in Adobe After Effects. So here we are in After Effects. I'm going to skip to the frame where the gun fires, which is right here on the 20th frame, and I am going to grab these solids, which I've already made some solids before, but we can just remove them for the sake of this tutorial. What we are going to do is we are going to create a new solid, just call it laser, and that is absolutely fine. Here is the black solid. Now what we're going to do is we're going to actually apply an effect to this solid as opposed to actually creating the laser from scratch. We need to go to Effect, we need to go to Generate, and then click on Advanced Lighting. Now this is going to create what looks like a lightning bolt, but what we're going to do is we're going to make it a complete straight line by decreasing the alpha obstacle, turbulence, forking, and decay all to 0. So if we just make that 0, decrease the percentage to 0, and make that 0, that is a laser in a straight line, as you can see. It's a little bit thin though, so what we're going to do is right here, we want to go to Core Settings, and the core radius we are going to bump up quite a bit so that it looks like a laser. Something like 11, that looks pretty good. Now we can also, if we go to the, if I can find it, glow settings, we're going to change the glow color to a red, because, you know, I'm patriotic and we want to glow on this laser because that's what gives it its color. Let's increase the glow opacity. Let's put it at, let's say 75. That looks alright, I guess, and bump the core opacities up to 100. So we've got this bright white laser emitting a red glow. Doesn't really make sense in terms of color, but that's absolutely fine. What we are going to do now is change the lightning type from direction to strike, and that means that we can position its start and end point however we want. So we're going to position its start point, if I can zoom right in here and shift over here, we are going to position its starting position right here, the origin, at the tip of the gun, and then we are going to position the end position just after it in the same perspective as the gun's barrel. So now let's zoom back out. That is where the laser is coming from. So, like we did before, in motion, we are going to change the length of this laser to just 2 frames. So, here I go. I'm done. That didn't take long because I just split the layer and then split the layer after 2 frames, then just deleted what was left over. So, we are going to do the same thing. We are going to animate this thing as it goes past. So, let's just select it, click P, well not click P, press P on the keyboard for position, and then animate it. So, click the stopwatch next to position. That's going to be our start point. And on the second frame, we are going to do the exact same thing, and we are going to move this thing so it is just going off the screen. Try to get in the same perspective as the gun's barrel, just like so. So now, as we play this thing back, the laser is firing out of the gun. Thanks very much for watching this tutorial on how to create laser beams in Apple Motion, Apple Final Cut Pro, and Adobe After Effects. Please like this video if you liked it. Please comment if you want to tell me something. And as always, subscribe if you feel the vibe. This is Phrasmotica saying goodbye.